This is Fam Electric Ghost. We're live on the air with Clementine Moss for the first time. You're the founder and drummer of Zepparella, and we love to talk to musicians. We started back in 2016 with talking to emerging and independent musicians. We've hit our this is actually episode 897 of the podcast. We've been around since 2016, and we're happy to have you on the podcast today. Check out clemthegreat.com. And we're going to do a lot of cool things. The focus we're going to talk about today is a contemplative practice that informs learning a musical instrument, which I think I'm going to dig a lot. So yeah, let's start. Oh, I forgot to mention our sponsor is Newsly. So check out Newsly and use coupon, and you can 1 month subscription. And this podcast is a featured podcast on the Newsly channel, and we will be on Newsly later tonight, so you go to get 1 free month for a premium subscription. So thank you. It's a mouthful, but yeah, we welcome you to the show because we started with musicians. We still like to talk to them. We talk to them not as frequently as we used to, but we do still talk to them as much as we can.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much.
So you're the founder and drummer of Zepparella, and like I'm 55 years old. I'm a child of the 70s. I started listening to music on vinyl. My brother was 7 years older than me, and he was a Zeppelin fanatic. Like he had like, everything Zeppelin around him. Like, and where he's a black kid, and like, well, how do you like them? I said, well, they're blues. I like the Stones too. So, and it's interesting how you chose to be a drummer in Bonham, like Moon, and like the great like star drummers of that era. You had Bonham, you had Moon, you had like Mitch Mitchell, you had a lot of these drummers that were like as big as the lead singers, as the guitarist in these bands. Bonham's like foundational.
Right.
So how did you get interested in wanting to get into Zeppelin music?
Well, I love that you threw in Mitch Mitchell. To me, that means that you're really a musician because Jimi Hendrix drummer's name.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Oh gosh, one of my very favorites. He just knocks me out, his drumming. So I have a kind of a funny story. I played different instruments as a kid, but then I didn't really start playing drums until I was 27 years old. It was kind of a fluke that happened in my life. And as soon as I started playing drums, I kind of knew it was just my instrument. It was the thing I wanted to do when I came into the room. And within maybe a year and a half, I think I started playing in bands after I started playing. I think one good thing about learning an instrument when you're older is you can be a little more thoughtful about what it is that you want to do. Whereas I really wish that I had learned when I was 10, 11 years old. So a lot of things were really natural, right? But I got to be very focused about what I wanted to do, on the drums or learn on the drums. So that was one benefit. And when I started playing drums, I realized, I'd fallen in love with Led Zeppelin when I was, 13, 14 years old. And when I started playing the drums, I realized that so much of why I was so passionate about Led Zeppelin was because of the drums. When you're not really a musician, you just listen to the whole, and when I was able to really zero in, when you listen in on the drums, and I started playing the drums and tried to learn some Zeppelin, I really realized why it was that I loved that music so dearly. And I didn't think I was ever going to. I didn't think I was ever going to be able to do that, because I started playing so late, and it just never occurred to me that this is what I would be doing. I've been playing in Zepparella now for 18 years, so I had no idea that was going to happen. Yeah.
And Bonham was such a power attack drummer, the sheer power. Like I heard that the engineers didn't have to mic everything. Like there's some people like the Eagles, they were they ended up with an engineer that mic'd Bonham, And they tried to mic Eagles that way, and then Don Henley and the rest of the band was like, no, we need very precise mics like everywhere. And they like, well, Bonham didn't need that because he could just hit it so he didn't need to.
He could hit it hard, and
But
also
it's just interesting.
he was also playing such big drums. And I think something that he doesn't get celebrated a lot for is that he was a master of tuning and of sound, like the way his drums sound. There's a really funny story. Yeah, I think there's a really funny story of, I think it maybe was Carmine Appice who was visiting Bonham's home, and he sat down at Bonham's drum kit while Bonham went to get him drinks, and Bonham came back into the room, and the drummer, I think it was Carmine, said, dude, what's wrong with your drums? Did you just unpack them or something? And Bonham sat down at his drums and was like, what are you talking about? And he started playing it. It sounded like Bonham, it's like he knew just how to hit them.
He tuned it right for himself.
Tuned it for him.
That's interesting when you find. Yeah. It's like if you try to, jump on Hendrix's guitar, the way he tuned it or the way he had it done, like most people couldn't play it because it was very customized to him. And a lot of people, if you ever try to deal with like Keith Emerson and the way he tuned his Moogs, you're like, what? You're like he understood what he was doing. Like when you get these masters, they know where they are, and they tend to do things that are not orthodox. They tend to like do things that are not in the rule book. And if somebody else gets on it, they're looking for the rules. Like, well, it's not being done that way.
Right. Everybody. Yeah. I guess if you, I think the mark of some of the real master players is that they can hear in their head how they want it to be, and they don't settle for anything less. Right.
Yeah. That's the thing. When you get somebody that like they know where they want it to be. Like I was watching like Stevie Wonder because I'm a keyboardist, and songs in the key of life. And he used to play note by note on monophonic instruments to get to the big notes, because he got the Dream Machine later where you could do polyphonic, but he was using a bunch of monophonic things like ARPs where he was putting in the notes, and he knew what he wanted, but he was layering them. And it just took so much time for him to do that, but he knew exactly where he was going.
Yeah.
And if people today wouldn't take the time to do that, but the sound you get from actually doing that is unbelievable.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Did you see that that recent documentary that came out about that? It was that concert in Central Park in the late 60s, and it starts off with Stevie playing drums.
Oh, yeah, I've seen him play drums, and people get freaked out. I saw him like he was in like Scandinavia or something playing drums one time.
Yeah, this is a really great recent documentary.
Yeah, he can jump on the drums, and people would like, what? But he's just one of those guys that's like a foundational musician. Like when he had to, he would get and jump on basses and drums and play whatever like a Prince. He knew what he wanted, and he could be so self-directed that he would just play it himself. And Hendrix was known for jumping on the bass and taking it from Noel and saying, no, it's got to be like this, and actually doing it.
Right. Amazing. Yeah.
I just think it's like, being a one-person band myself, I was in bands for a long time, and then people stopped showing up, and I said, well, I'm just going to do everything myself because I kind of know where I want to go. And so when you have that kind of vision, I've always been into the Todd Rundgrens, the Stevie Wonders, the Miles Davis, Sun Ra's, the people like that know what they want. And when you know what you want to do, it's like if you don't have to wait for anybody else.
It can be easy, and it can be difficult to lead a band, right? So you're cutting out all of that chatter.
Well, I do like being in bands. I used to be in bands, and I do from time to time bring bands in. And it's much. But when you brought Zepparella together, maybe you can talk about the founding of that and how that came about, because people probably don't know that story. They're probably very interesting.
Yeah. So Gretchen Menn, the guitarist, the band members are Anna Christina, the vocalist, Holly West, the bass player, and Gretchen Menn, the guitarist. And Gretchen and I were playing in an AC/DC band, and we wanted to play more shows. And I told her that a few years before I'd had an idea to play Zeppelin and had kind of charted out like what songs I thought were, I could even be capable of doing. And she said, well, I want to learn Jimmy Page's stuff. So that's how the band was born. And, we had some ideas about how we wanted it to be. We really wanted to focus it on the musicality of it over anything.
Was
And
there a particular
yeah.
song that you loved? Like when you started getting into Zeppelin, what was like your main song? I mean, they have so many songs. Like
So many,
it's probably
yeah.
hard to pick one, but what did you first like get really confident that you had it?
The song
Had the
that
had the
is,
had particular
yeah, the song that is like a warm bath to me is The Rover. It's,
Rover. Oh yeah.
yeah, The Rover. It's got a beautiful drum beat. It's, there's this part in the middle that really just lifts the whole crowd. I really love that song at the beginning of the set because, it's like if I can kind of calibrate for any weird drum stuff. We fly to a lot of shows and I'm playing on other people's drums a lot of the time. And,
Oh yeah.
and so in the first song, I'll kind of figure out, how things are situated, or maybe something is loose or weird or something. And I can get through that song very easily, even if the back of my mind is like trying to work around all of this goofiness that's
Yes,
going on.
yeah.
It's like I just feel like I just settle in it. I don't mess it up. And also it's really fun to play. There's all these little like he kind of stomps on the hi-hat in different parts. That's really fun. And
Yeah, that is one of the cool songs. I mean, I'm very much into that catalog. Like one of my favorite songs is like, Over the Hills and Far Away.
beautiful.
That one I like a lot. I like House of the Holy, but I like, being a
Mhm.
keyboardist, I got into John Paul Jones's keyboard playing.
Isn't he amazing?
And he's like underrated. Like he's one of these guys, like I always say, like some of the best synthesis, like John Paul Jones, Pete Townsend, because of like what he did on
Mhm.
Lifehouse, or like if you listen to Quadrophenia, listen to like Barbara O'Reilly or the Reflexer,
Mm.
the stuff he used to do with the ARPs and the
Mhm.
envelope followers and stuff. So I get real technical into that. But the idea, like John Paul Jones is like an awesome bass player, but he's a fantastic synthesist. And
Mhm.
you listen to Kashmir, and you're like, what? And oh my gosh. And it's
I
like
know.
there's like that kind of presence that you could do. And it's like in the later Zepp albums, you see him like opening up his kind of progressive rock. He's kind of being on par with like Yes and Genesis in terms of
Totally.
what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I know everybody knows John Paul Jones, but I will always think he's underrated because what he offers those songs is just so deep. Yeah.
He's a fantastic producer. I mean, he's worked with REM. Like people probably don't know how many bands he's actually produced.
I loved him in them Crooked Vultures. I just really
Oh
loved
yeah,
that.
he's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, I really
he's
loved
just
that
fantastic.
project. Yeah, yeah.
So Zeppelin is just such a foundational band. They kind of went different direction than the Stones or the Who. I mean, they all kind of blues based. They kind of power blues, but then the fact that Page is such a good studio musician and he's so good at like acoustic guitar parts
Mhm.
like that are very intricate. You can tell that like the studio level musician he is. He's just so fantastic. And then he put together such a tight band,
Mhm.
and he, being in the Yardbirds and being that studio musician for a long time, playing with Clapton and, just 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 the ability to just know a direction. You
Yeah.
think about having, a guy like John Paul Jones and then, the fantastic singer
Yeah.
that you have there. So the interesting thing about like the Zeppelin is that, if you think about the voice, a lot of times in rock, you get like a Geddy Lee, you got an Axl Rose. It's kind of this nature where men are trying to sound kind of female in their voice for the frequency. And you see it like, it's kind of got the female tones, like it's like the falsettos or the higher notes in that type of rock music. So when you actually have like a female centered band sing it, it's probably a different. It's actually trying, doing the guys are trying to do that. And then
Mm.
so, what do you feel about like the voice aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I think Robert Plant, first of all, I mean, his instrument, just the tone and the sound and what he did with his, like with his voice is, I mean, it's Robert Plant, right? Everybody's
Yeah, yeah,
been trying to do that,
and
since
reach.
he did it, right? And I am just so admiring of Anna Christina, our singer, the fact that she can belt it, she
And
can bring
channel
it
it.
down, I mean, she channels it. And the voice is difficult because everybody can sing something, even if they sing off key. So everybody's a critic about the voice, right? And
Mhm.
and when you're the front person, I mean, you're in the crosshairs of everybody's judgment, and she owns it. And I'm so proud to back her up, like to feel
That's
like,
cool.
wow, I'm her drummer for this project. Like what an honor that is to be with such a consummate musician and such an amazing performer, captivating,
And
and then her voice. She spends
yeah,
so much time
the voice is
on
an instrument. You get a lot of
perfecting that.
yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of people don't realize, I mean, I'm very much into, like, music history, and I
Hmm.
listen into, like, old Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra in the age of the voice, right?
Mm.
And you go back to that and like the amount of time and the work people used to put into, finding these the people with a perfect pitch or
Hmm.
having a voice like Sinatra or Nat King Cole, having that Johnny Mathis type of voice. And, we kind of got, when the punk movement came in, they said, well, you don't have to have a perfect voice.
Hmm.
But there was
Hmm.
a time when you had these people that had these very unique voices in their instruments.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and people, sometimes don't realize how much of a musician a vocalist is.
Such
Um,
a musician. And actually, we really see it with Anna because she started learning the harmonica for Zepparella to play When the Levee Breaks. And
uh-huh.
now she's known as one of the premier harmonica players on the internet. She's just astounding. And I think that that really comes from her real musicianship when she's singing and when she's performing. You talk about Frank Sinatra, and one thing about Sinatra that you really hear when you really dive in, and I went through a big Sinatra period for a while in my life, and he's so connected to the rhythm. He's so
Mm,
connected to the phrasing and the drums. And
yeah,
that's how Anna is. Like, I just playing with her, it's like it's easier to play, right? Because she's so tapped in to that deep underlying rhythm. And
yeah.
yeah, it's an honor to play with her. Yeah.
So as a drummer, like, did you have? Yeah, I know Bonham was an influence, but did you have other drummers that you were influenced by? We mentioned Mitch Mitchell, but
Yeah. I love Mitch Mitchell. And I love Levon Helm a lot.
oh yeah,
I love the
the
real
band,
swampy, I love swampy
band.
drumming,
I got like every basement tape you could listen to.
Yeah, I know, I
I
know.
got like 10 hours of basement tapes.
Oh, how cool.
But
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
yeah, the
And
Big Pink stuff. Yeah,
yeah, and because I'm a lyricist and I'm a writer, right? I am really drawn to lyrics. And so the drummers that I love are the ones that allow the lyrics to really shine.
mm,
And that's, when they say playing, a drummer plays for a song. Those are
yeah.
the drummers that really excite me.
But Levon's interesting because he's able to sing and do the beat, and he used to come up with these ideas to kind of emphasize the beat when with the words. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
so,
that's what the great drummers who do that kind of, who play in that way. I think that that's really great. I mean, you mentioned Don Henley. He's
yeah,
somebody who does
yeah,
that. Anybody who sings, of course, does that. But I would say even Neil Peart. I mean, he makes those
yeah,
vocals soar.
yeah,
He's not
yeah, that's
stepping
true.
on the vocals. He's providing a bed and like pushing them to the forefront. And that
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's what like the kind of drummers that I tend to
you
go
like,
for are
yeah,
those guys. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, Bonham used to accentuate playing a lot, just emphasize it. It was a perfect, like, wow, it's
They
like, how did
they
that
were
happen?
buddies, right? They were
Yeah,
buddies and had played together before Zeppelin, so that he was really kind of they were
connected.
taking their cues off of each other. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting because, like, I even and there's a guy named Grant Hart from he's passed away, but from Husker Du, and he was a
Mm.
kind of post-punk drummer, but he used to sing this kind of
Mhm.
60s Beatles thing, and then do really intricate kind of percussion for a punk band. He was playing with bells and all kinds of interesting things, and all kinds of percussive drum instruments within that punk contest and context. And I was like, wow, that's really cool that he's actually singing and doing these intricate parts. It wasn't just like the Ramones
Yeah.
or the Clash. It was a little bit more going on. And I've always been like into multiple types of music, like almost every genre. Like what I did with my band, I call it expansive,
Mhm.
because if I want to go into like Sun Ra, if I want to go into Parliament,
Wow.
if I
Yeah.
want to go, do some Yes or Genesis
Wow.
type of
Yeah.
idea, that I can go any direction I want to go. And they're all kind of, to me, it's all interconnected. Because if you listen to a band like Funkadelic, they were doing jazz, psychedelic, rock, soul on the same record.
Yeah.
Some songs are like Motown songs, and
Yeah.
then some songs are like Mothers of them, and Frank Zappa and the Mothers, and they're like
Yeah.
it's like they're in the kind of same headspace.
Right. Right. Yeah. I feel like bands who do that have almost a more difficult time than a band who says, okay, we are, specifically country or specifically punk rock or specifically speed metal or specifically like if you have a real narrow genre, you're so lucky,
Yeah,
and I like you, I tend to like so much, and each song kind of becomes its own thing that
yeah,
it's hard to say I play this kind of music, and so in my original stuff, and so nobody listens to it because it's like I
yeah,
don't have a
very
good
eclectic.
way of kind of saying this is what it is. So I think it's easier when you're in those kind of things. Like for Zepparella, it's a lot. It's very easy. People know exactly what it
People
is.
know
Right?
that.
Yeah.
But it's like
Yeah.
Jim Morrison, like he started getting disinterested in the Doors, and people. I remember there was a quote, like I'm going to kind of quote him, but he's like people just want to hear the same song,
Mm.
and he was a poet. If you really
Mm-hmm.
look at it, he was like a Dylan level poet, and
Mm-hmm.
he was getting bored of having to do Light My Fire. When he was like when the Doors started, he just did Stream of Consciousness
Right.
kind of poetic
Yeah.
stuff, and people used to love it. And then they wanted to kind of pin him down and try to
Right.
make him go into the pop format, and he didn't like that. If you
Yeah,
read about
because
it,
they
if you read,
did pop so well,
yeah,
right? Like
he
they
didn't
became
like
such a it's like or like do more of that, do more of that. You're right. Yeah.
he liked the stream of consciousness, like when they started, like the end. He
Me
wants to do the
too.
end and do that all the. I like kind of like I like the Dead. I like
Uh,
Funkadelic. I
uh-huh.
like the jam band, like the Almonds. Just go on stage and go for 20 minutes
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Jessica. Like, what's wrong with
Right.
that?
Yeah. That's
but,
like
but
great music for a musician, right? Like sometimes I think, God, I would love to be in just a jam band like that where I just get to like just rock out and hopefully like the Dead, there's another drummer or percussionist on stage and you just get to kind of just go
yeah,
for 4 hours,
like the
That
Almonds,
sounds like
they
a
had
lot
that.
of fun.
Yeah, they had the dual drumming going on. They had
Yeah,
the
I
two
know.
full drum sets, and then even like a percussionist on top of that. And
So fun. That would be so
yeah,
fun.
Funkadelic was like the same thing. They would have multiple drummers and percussionists.
Yeah.
They got like 20 guys on stage, and it's like chaotic, but it was something about kind of that kind of fusion kind
Yeah.
of thing. And it's kind of like Miles started going that way because he
Yeah.
saw that these
Yeah.
things were happening,
That's right.
and I just think it's interesting. It seems like it's interesting. Like in the hip hop genre, now hip hop bands will go and pull like full like R&B and jazz guys onto the stage and actually have full bands behind them.
You know,
Some of the hip hop artists, and I'm like, that's interesting because like some of the rock guys are going into the box
mhm.
and using like MPCs and Pro Tools and all these other tools, but they're not actually playing live. They're playing to the tracks, and I'm more of
Yeah.
like I kind of like what the direction that the non other bands are doing.
Yeah, I love combining the live drums with the electronic stuff. I think that, when I started playing, I was listening to hip hop. This was in the 90s in New York City. And I was listening to a lot of hip hop. And when I started playing drums, I thought, I want to play in a hip hop band. Like, I love these beats. Like those are the beats that I want to play. And I would love to have like a live, a drummer in a hip hop band. I thought it would be so cool. So I'm happy that they're starting to do that now.
Well, it's a cool hybrid because I've kind of looked at, I like to do stream of consciousness, DAWless recording right into multi-tracks. Because I got all these modes, I got all these analog synths. And what I found is like when I try to put them into the DAW, they were getting so much compression. And it's like I have these modes, and like, why would I get rid of the beauty of a mode, which is very fat? It's very organic. It's almost like acoustic instruments. So why would you? And I heard like what happened, like when the Yamaha DX7 showed up, that digital synth kind of killed Moog, it killed Prophet, it killed Oberheim, it killed all these analog synths. And people, the recording engineer said, well, the big analog synths are so taking up so much headroom, they didn't like it. They liked the fact that the D50s and the DX7s and the Korgs and ones, they don't take up the bandwidth that a Moog or a Prophet 5 or an Oberheim. Like if you listen to like Eddie Van Halen Jump, that's very fat. You listen to like Genesis, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, those Moogs take up a lot of the headroom. They take up a lot of the space, in the recording. And if you want to be more finesse and layer, the digital synths don't do that. And so, but I think is you lose some of the kind of artistry of the progressive rock era. And then what's cool now is a lot of hip hop bands. I found Moogs, found Prophets, found Oberheims, and say, oh, we need to bring that analog in because there's something about that analog that's cool. So hip hop is kind of trying to bring that progressive rock stuff back.
That's really
some of the
cool.
more experimental stuff. But I find it really cool. Like I start looking for bands who are trying stuff that's different. It's not like who I like to interview, but yeah. So it's just interesting that the whole dynamic, like where John Paul Jones went with that. When you start getting to the later albums, he starts introducing a lot of those poly analog synths.
So cool.
It's just really. I see that it's coming back and it's cool, but it's like a mirror. Like you just said, you never know this age. Somebody will pull like 1920s flapper music and put it out, or somebody will pull it's like every genre is open. Like if you want to pull something from the 50s, you could pull something from the 50s. You want to pull bebop, you could go and be bebop. You could be funk. You could be jam
it's a very
band.
creative. Yeah, it's a very creative time musically because we all get to do it in our living rooms. I mean, it's really, I feel like, people say a lot of the time that, the music is, the music industry is blah, blah, blah. And I just think, but creatively, it's pretty awesome because we now have all of these tools that we can work with to, for our self-expression. Yeah.
And I'm going to talk about the contemplative practice because I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Nichiren Daishonin Buddhist, and I found like a lot of what I do with my synthesizers, I call myself Family Electric Ghost because like the idea of the ghost in a machine, right?
Yeah.
I kind of like Dr. Robert Moog, even though he was an engineer, has statements saying that he felt that the Moogs actually had some kind of presence, like they were living, like they had like a spirit inside of them. There were comments where he kind of said that he felt they had consciousness. And I'm like, wow, this guy's an engineer. And he's a really great doctor. He, invented sense pretty much. But he felt that the machines he made were designed to give you like this endless landscape of this like organic, could be a member of your band because it's kind of variable and it changes and it has a character. And you kind of, yet what you end up learning is you have to let it be what it is, not try to tame it.
Yeah.
And then it actually gives you didn't expect.
That's really, really cool.
So I kind of look at it that way. So I'm wondering what your contemplative practice, how that comes into play with your musicianship.
Yeah. Well, that's, I have that book that I'm kind of talking about these days, which is called From Bonham to Buddha and Back. And it's pieces of my life, biography, some biographical stories about kind of, how do you decide when you're 27 years old to play drums, right? And kind of how I got to now. But a lot of the stories have to do with, I found meditation practice and drumming 30 years ago, right around the same time. And so I've discovered as my life has progressed that I was thinking for a while that I was this spiritual person and then I was this drummer and these two different aspects of myself. And more I see how, how it's all just one thing. And, when we're playing an instrument, I mean, there are so many places that we see how our meditation practice shows up in our life. So me as a musician, I see it when I'm I'm on the drum stool in performance and I'm trying to allow the song to play me, right? I'm letting
Mm.
go of all of the noise that's happening. What about your left foot, or who came to the show, or what's that guy doing over there on the corner of the stage, all that stuff. And I'm just trying to bring my awareness into that center of awareness into which everything rises and falls. I'm trying not to get attached to any particular thing or things happen. So a lot of the book is illustrating what that looks like, when my mind enters my playing and then everything kind of falls apart, right? So there's a lot of those kind of stories, and then stories about limitation and how our meditation practice can get rid of, these limitations we put on ourselves that show up. So, for instance, when I play at altitude. We play in Colorado quite a bit. And, at 9,000 feet, you don't get that much oxygen. And drumming two
Must be
hours of
hard. Yeah,
Zeppelin
it
is
must
a
be harder.
real, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a real physical thing. And so I go through how it's not just that I have to change the way I'm doing things, make sure I'm breathing deeply, make sure I'm very relaxed, make sure I get a lot of sleep and water and all these things. Um, but I also have to let go of the idea that there's going to be a problem.
Oh,
I realized that so much of the time I would show up to a show and realize, oh gosh, this is going to be hard. And then I can't get over that feeling. And it's like a clamp that sets down
yeah,
on
you
me.
made it hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm anticipating it. The anticipation, is what's hard. And when we look at Buddhist practice, that what we're looking at is our attachment to the anticipation, attachment to the aversion of something happening. We have all these attachments, and those things just set us off kilter. So it really is about finding that place in the center, allowing our life to flow. As much as we can, and not getting too caught up in those mental constructs. And
Yeah,
then,
well, that
mhm.
go ahead.
Yeah,
But
go ahead.
what I was
Oh,
gonna say is like, yeah, go ahead. Okay, almost out of the way.
yeah, there's a little delay. Yeah, the final thing, that I would say about that too, that shows up in the book is, the internal negative voice that a lot of us have. And for artists, any kind of creative person, sometimes those negative voices are really loud. And, that's, I think, why a lot of artists, fall into substances or just can't get out of depressions because, this judgment within themselves, because they, like we were talking about before, they have this idea of how they want it to be, how they want their output to be. It's never going to be as good as they feel it in their head. So there's this, we get into this judgmental kind of mindset, and letting go of that voice, I think, is very helpful when we think about the contemplative practice. Yeah.
It's really interesting because a lot of what I've read about, the history of musicians, guys like Hendrix, like such a phenomenal guitar player, but was very insecure about his voice.
Yeah.
Like when he went to the recording booth, he used to put like blankets or curtains up. He didn't want anybody looking at him. He's very insecure about the way his vocals were, and he was he's like the most brilliant guitar player even now, right? But he had that insecurity about his voice, which was really critical. And he was like, I've read he's manic depressive about certain things, and that was part of it. And it's just like the point, like when he played, though, a lot of it he would just let go
Yeah.
and the kind of letting go, and he got into that zone. And what I've
Yeah.
kind of learned as a musician is like stream of consciousness recording. I like to record stuff like when I go to write, do a stream of consciousness. Don't keep on running the tape back and trying to make it perfect. I go let it be what it's going to be, and then maybe do overdubs on it later. But as I got older as a musician, I got less into being on the grid and trying to make it perfect, as to letting the piece be like a sound painting and let
Mm,
it be what, feel the universe, trust myself as a musician, and just put it down to the
mm,
point like I'm thinking about an idea, put down a multi-track and just like read the song without trying to look at the phone. Like just
mm.
do it because you trust yourself. You did not let the words just come out
I
and just,
imagine that your meditation practice is really helpful for that because you're able to access that
yeah,
kind of non-judgmental, non-attached place within yourself that allows stuff to come through you.
you
Yeah,
have to turn the
beautiful.
logic brain off. Like I think in the
Mhm.
creative process, the problem is if you start throwing too much logic where like, did I get that note right? Am I in the right key?
There's a
Should
place for that.
there's a
There's
place for
definitely a
it.
place for that. But I think in the pure creation of it, and
Yeah.
probably in the pure connection with the audience too. I think that's something that is good to let go of. And I think that, on stage, in a way, it's almost easier to do that if you're able to really feel what's coming back to you.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
conversation between musician and audience is just a magical, addictive, wonderful thing. Even for me as a drummer with my eyes closed back there doing that,
Feel the
when
audience.
I can feel when the audience lifts up. I can feel when those things happen, and that's the magic. Yeah,
That
that
must be
helps us all.
hard during COVID when you're an artist that's like a live artist and you feel you feed off of that crowd, right? And you don't have that crowd feedback for a number of months or years because of the COVID like lockdowns. That must be hard because I do miss when I was in bands that even the connection when you're recording with another musician. Like if
Yeah,
you're live in the studio and you're not doing track by track separately, you're in there coming up with ideas, and that just being able to kind of nod and look at the drummer, look at the bass player, and do that kind of nonverbal communication that you
I
see
th-
like a jazz band, doing like,
yeah,
or even
yeah.
a fusion rock band, you see them kind of nod and they kind of know. They're not, they just kind of know. They let go to know each other enough and to
Yeah.
trust each other's instincts, and you kind of feel it.
Yeah, it's a magic communication. And I mean, Gretchen and I have been playing now for almost 20 years together. So, it's kind of like I feel like I can read her mind. I can hear what she means in, what she's
Hmm.
doing on stage. And that's really magical. And I did really miss, once I was able to sleep for about 4 months after, 20 years of
Not sleeping.
uh, touring and traveling all the time. And, once I kind of was able to rest, I remember driving home from the studio and suddenly like I heard, like I had that big sense feeling of what it feels like to have a big guitar amplifier and a bass amplifier, like just that wash of sound. And I realized how much I just missed that feeling of the
Hmm.
sound. And then I started looking around and realizing, when we don't gather together and let music move through us together, that connection, I think people kind of go crazy a little bit. And
Yeah.
I kind of
Well, it's
saw
kind
that
of,
in a way. Yeah.
yeah, it was, a lot of people need it. Like music to me, like what I've learned, being a podcaster was that like I trying to thread the needle between all these diverse people, right? So talking to therapists, talking to writers, talking to actors, even like CEOs, is like, what's the common thing that all human beings are into? Like they like music, and
Yeah.
they music like the Beatles influenced like how many people become actors, musicians, artists. So music, guys like if you think about like Bob Marley, like how did he influence people? Dylan, it's like the
Yeah.
musicians can influence people just like any influencer or key figure. Like art and music is important, and some people put it in a box as well. It's something I listen to while I work, or when I jog, I guess a soundtrack when I jog, and I don't really listen to it. It kind of you seem to have people that aren't like real hardcore music fans. They just kind of listen to it in the background. And I've always been like music is such a core part of me that I try to integrate it into everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. We get to make it what we need it to be, um, and I'm fine with however, people connect to music. But I do think that the specialness of being in an audience with other people appreciating sound and communication. Yeah, I think that there's nothing like that, I think. Yeah,
Well, it's just this kind of communal connection. Pete
it
Townsend had
is.
this idea that when he was trying to do a rock opera for Who's Next, it was supposed to be Lifehouse. He had this, with all throughout Lifehouse, there's this idea of this universal key.
Mm,
And when you play in a concert, that you hit that universal key, people kind of vibe and they connect. So he had this
mm,
idea, and he was trying
mm,
to put it into the next Tommy, which Who's Next was supposed to be like a rock opera. And if you actually listen to the whole concept and some of the outtakes from it, he had this idea of this
mm,
universal key. I'm going to get in tune. And there's some
mm,
songs where you hear about getting in tune. The idea was that you get, a band plays at Woodstock and they play that universal key and people get into that vibe. And it just, but he had a hard time making it real because he
mm,
was trying to turn it into like a Tommy. But I
mhm.
got the idea of what he was saying because it is this thing that does happen.
Yeah,
You do hit these universal notes that connect to people, rhythms, beats, voices as a synthesis. I play with sound waves. I play with noise. And when you hit certain frequencies, you can get certain behaviors from human beings. Like
right.
as a musician, you trigger these notes, you trigger these rhythms, you see immediate reaction from the audience to what you're doing. So there is something to this idea of a universal key.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just to have everybody's attention in one place, too, I feel like it's unifying. It's like we become a part. It's like singing in a choir.
Mhm.
It's like you may be singing a different note, but blending all together to make this one sound. Um, I think that's magic. Yeah.
Yeah, it causes that connection because we're all kind of frequencies. Where there's
Hmm.
the idea of like a phantom. The idea of phantom, like a ghost is, there's, a ghost is electricity, and electricity runs on frequencies.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
synthesizers build those frequencies. And the whole idea is like when I got into electronic music was I'm going to build these kind of phantom electric soundscapes
That's so
and try to
cool.
connect to people because people are electricity and I can trigger that and then everybody can feel it.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Wonderful. What a great endeavor. What a great thing. Like, I know I want to affect people with my sound. That's pretty cool.
But I think that's what everybody does, as a musician when you're out there, like you feel it with the rhythms, but you're still kicking out sound waves. It's this
Yeah,
percussive sound waves.
right.
So I have a mode that's called a progressive. It's like called a drummer from another mother. It's actually called a drummer from another. We call it a DFM, and it
Uh-huh.
takes like square waves and triangle waves and creates percussive synthesis.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's taking those waveforms and it only creates percussive sounds versus like a
Right.
mini mode.
Uh-huh.
And you can see how these waves are triggering, a kick drum or a snare drum. You can build like these waveforms into replicating through analog what would be on a drum set, but you build this
Right.
kind of analog drum set. And
Wow.
yeah,
That's
it's just
cool.
it's like the whole journey in doing that is like I like to be able to create customized sounds like the way you customize the tuning of your drum
Yeah.
kit when you're talking about Bonham. If
Right.
you think about it, when you're not just taking samples, you're actually
Hmm.
taking waveforms and building your own vision of what you want that kick to be, where you want that tom to be, and then you're actually not taking somebody else's idea. It's like it's you. It's like how
That's
you want to express that rhythm.
Oh my gosh, infinite possibilities for your
Yeah,
voice. Yeah.
yeah. You're tuning it however you feel that day. You know,
Right. Right. Right.
for that
Wow.
moment.
Wow.
That
How creative. Yeah.
But I think that's what you do when like when you're on your drum set. Like any instrument, every musician, I think they tune to who they are.
Mm,
you know,
mhm,
and then
mhm.
they have that voice like Miles Davis on his horn is like he doesn't sound like somebody
Mhm.
else. He doesn't sound like anybody else. He doesn't sound like Coltrane. It's a
Right.
different. Like everybody, they could go onto the same instruments and they still don't sound the same. You think of like Stevie Ray Vaughan doing Voodoo Child versus Hendrix. It's the
Yeah.
same song, but one of them's a Texas blues version.
Yeah.
The other one's this cosmic version,
Right,
and
right.
they both stand in the same place.
Yeah.
So, like when you do your Zeppelin, like you guys are putting your Zeppelin, you feel like how you feel the song.
Right,
So
right.
it's like its own interpretation.
Yeah, I really love, the idea of, learning somebody else's parts the way that we do. In a way, I find myself, my own voice in that structure. It's like I have this structure, but I'm playing it like me, right? For as much as I
Mhm.
want to sound like Bonham, what I really wanna do is I wanna convey the feeling that I had when I was first listening to Bonham and those songs were transcendent, Immigrant Song, just blowing my mind,
Mhm.
right? And when I'm playing it, I'm trying to play it the way I remember hearing it, or, the
Mhm.
way that I remember it moving me. So I'm trying to play the hits the way that Bonham did, but I'm also trying to get into my feeling of the song, where it almost felt scary. It was so powerful, right? So
But
it's always going to be through my lens, right? What I do. Yeah.
Well, I think that's what's cool when you hear, people who are musicians, like versus like if I'm a DJ and I sample that and I just throw an 808 on something that didn't have an 808 or 727 on something or a 909, and I just throw some samples here and there. That yeah, there's a cool thing about that, but there's something about an actual musician interpreting a piece of music, and even if they're sight reading it, the way they interpret it is uniquely them. It's like in the music director, you can see the way they interpret like Chopin or Bach or Beethoven. They
Mhm.
interpret it differently, right? And
Yeah.
then the
Every
orchestra,
orchestra is different, right?
they
Every
all sound
orchestra is
they're
different.
playing the same music,
Yeah.
but it's different. So it proves
Yeah.
like, but if you have AI or you just loop something in a sample and you there's no human expression if you're taking a piece of music and this there's already created.
That's already created, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, the magic I think for DJs is being able to connect these different already recorded pieces and put them together in this
they
new
curate.
way that kind of
Yeah,
yeah, it can kind of pull out, like if you layer 2 things on top of each other, suddenly it pulls out, one
something
aspect
else.
of a drum beat that you didn't hear, if you put, when the levee breaks drum beat underneath something else, you're going to hear the drum beat in a different way because of what was put against it. And I think that can be really fun and exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's creative. Yeah.
I think it's really
Yeah.
creative when you see the really awesome DJs that actually
Mhm.
pull things together with like field recordings and alternate, turn of different beats and layering. If you layer the samples, like like a famous like De La Soul, or you
Mhm.
look at like a band like Public Enemy, even if their politics with regard, the Bomb Squad had this ability to do multiple layers of samples
Mhm.
for that band. They're almost unrecognizable because the way they layered them. And
Mhm.
so they ended up creating this something that doesn't sound like anything else. And so when
Yeah.
you look at the hip hop guys that could actually do it, and even like the old, actual vinyl DJs versus CDJ DJs, and the skill it takes to actually do it on the vinyl
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
a drum machine and then layer stuff on top of that. There's artistry to that. And I just say like if you take something like Nice Ice Baby and you just change the lyrics on something that already exists, then that's not as creative. But
Mm.
that's my opinion. But but I'm not saying that you can't be creative, but you could be as not as creative as you could be. So
Well, I could say that about some drummers too, right?
yeah, it just depends on how in the pocket you're gonna be. Like, are you gonna do it note for note? Like,
No, I just mean that, if somebody is passionate, like really passionate about what they're doing and it's their means of self-expression, then then I got to give it to them, because it's hard to put yourself out there and to create something and then put it out for people to hear. It doesn't matter what it is. It's hard. I always have to give people a pass for trying, for doing it.
Trying.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the live musician, I still think is in the age of like AI coming up, and a lot of things that are more robotic. Um, I just like to see live musicians still out there and
Me too.
still showing their ability, just because there's a certain skill set that if I understand, like if everybody could do it, then everybody would be a musician, and it's
Mm.
cool to respect skilled musicians and artists. Like if you're a skilled painter, like not everybody's gonna be Rembrandt, right? Not everybody's gonna be Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna be
Yeah.
Hendrix, and there's still place for those type of people.
Hmm.
But some people say, well, that's all been done, to move forward. And to me, like, you still have to have this canvas open for creative people to kind of do the newfound thing.
Yeah.
Because like, how are you going to get to that if you say, well, the best thing I can do is I'm not going to even attempt that, but just recreate what was done in the past. But I think,
Hmm.
like, if you, as a musician, I just think it's cool to be out there and actually express yourself.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Yeah. I think everybody does what they can do, and I think that we can't. Oh, my hair looks weird. I think that yeah, I like I said, I have to give it to anybody who says this is what I'm going to do, as a way of like connecting to my own expression, my own joy, and and then I let him go. Let him have it. Yeah, it's great.
so if people go to your Clem the Great website, what will they find? Are your access to your book, access to the band?
Yep, my book is there, and the Zepparella is there, and my original projects, musical projects, are there. And then, I teach meditation, and I'm a spiritual counselor. So the link to that stuff is there as well. So Clem the Great is kind of the center of all my stuff. So
That's
yeah,
the main
definitely.
main way to get into everything
Yeah,
that
that's
you've
right.
been talking about.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I saw that Michael Powell is here. I don't know if he's still here. He's been a great supporter of the band. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Oh, thank you. That's so nice to say that. It's a wonderful book for musicians and soul searchers on all levels of the journey. That means so much to me that people are reading the book and saying such nice things. So thank you.
Are
Yeah.
you working on more books, or are you just focused on pushing that book?
Well, this one came out at the end of February, so I'm still in, the push of just getting it out there, right? Which I have no idea how to do, because I've never done that before. But podcasts are one thing that I really love to do, because I get to talk with people like you who are passionate about the things I'm passionate about. And then I have just kind of started, like, this little thing started formulating in my head about something else that I want to write. So, that'll be years away, I'm sure, but I'll get on it. Yeah.
Yeah. When on the author train, then people, like, once I've been talking to authors lately, and they get into like series of books. Once they get a connected audience, then people are looking for the next edition. But yeah, it's
Right.
a whole
Right.
process, like when you get out there. But podcast has been, it's been a really cool way to connect with a community. The whole idea of this podcast initially was to just take in the merging an independent artist I didn't think were being paid attention to, and give them kind
Uh-huh.
of a behind the music uh way to be out there and have a free form discussion in a world where people tend to only go 30 seconds or 90 seconds. Give a longer form way to talk to people that maybe would never get that opportunity. And it's been wonderful to be able to talk to people from beyond just musicians. It's opened up to authors and therapists, and found musicians that are doing more than just music, like yourself, doing working on books and
Yeah.
working on therapy. So yeah, it's just a cool way to get out there and connect to people. uh you know
It's
all over the
amazing that
world.
you've been doing it for so long too. I mean, from 2016. I feel like you're on the cutting edge of it, right? You must have.
One of
I have to
the
go
early
down. I've listened
podcasts.
to, yeah, I've listened to a couple of them, but I want to go down to like the beginning and see like where it started
Yeah,
and
in
who
the
you were
beginning, you'll
talking
see
to.
tons of bands that you probably never heard before. Because
Uh-huh.
like most of what we did was like bands from like South Africa, bands from Tokyo. I still, I'm gonna be talking to a band from Russia. I'm gonna be talking to a
Cool.
band from somewhere in I think in yeah, Europe.
Uh-huh.
So I talked to a lot of different artists. I was talking to some bands in Berlin and in Australia and Sweden and Latvia.
I saw
Just
you
like a
were
lot of cool bands.
you have one that I want to listen to with Kenny Aronoff,
Oh
great
yeah.
drummer. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear that one. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, it's just cool to be able to talk to a lot of cool people. Just because, you know, like I think sometimes the way media is, they have this focus on sensational, and I kind of want to get into this idea of the behind the music.
Yeah, those are the
Like
kind of things that I
like
like to listen to too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm like I could get into sensational, and that's but that gets you to a certain level in podcasting. If you go and decide to do something that's gonna, oh, what did they say? What did they say? But I'm
Yeah, but
like,
aren't
nah,
we tired of that? Like, I'm so
yeah,
tired of that. I don't
I,
trust
that's
anybody
why
who's
I
trying
don't
to
do. I
sell
don't
me
do.
anything.
Yeah, well, that's what a lot of it is now. It's like since I've gotten into the industry, it's become like a pitch world
Yeah.
where like
Yeah.
almost a lot of podcasts are like pitch, like snake oil pitches.
That's
but
right.
um,
That's right.
but
Yeah.
my whole thing was like I was never gonna go that way because I still love to talk to people and
Yeah.
creatives for like all different levels. So there's
That's
a
great.
photographer, or somebody's an actor or a film director, independent film director. Somebody's a video game guy, he's an indie game maker. He's doing something new. You never heard of it. He's on the big guys. I would want to give the underdog, like the underground, because I was always into like when I first got into music, I was into like the Velvet Underground,
Yeah.
and I liked the idea what Lou Reed was doing, and
Yeah.
he had a female drummer.
He
Um,
did.
it
Yeah.
yeah, and I was
Yeah.
like, that was like Mo, and I'm like,
Right. That's
wow,
right.
Mo Tucker,
Yeah.
and I'm like, did she ever inspire you, Mo Tucker? The idea that she was like the drummer in the Velvets?
No, because I was listening to the Velvet Underground much before I even played drums. So it didn't even register to me,
Oh,
that it was any different. I didn't understand then how, especially at the time, how rare the female
that
drummer
was
was.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
she was like one of the only ones I knew about, and then,
That's
I got
right.
into like the whole Riot Girl thing with like Sleater Kinney and
That's right.
like Liz Phair and a lot of like if you think about like L7 and a
Yeah.
lot of those bands like that, and I said, wow, there's if you get into that type of thing, and Joan Jett back in the day
Uh-huh. Right.
with her band,
Yeah.
um, there's just the whole idea of like I ended up talking to mostly at the beginning of my show female independent songwriters,
Mm.
but because I felt like they weren't getting attention, that the
Mm-hmm.
guys were getting lots of attention. And I was like, well, like I liked Liz Phair, I liked Juliana Hatfield, I
Mm.
liked Sevens, I like that those type of bands. And I was like a college radio DJ guy, and I was pushing a lot of these underground bands. And I'd
Cool.
gotten out of like listening to the Replacements and Who's Guru and REM, and I said, hey, I like the Juliana Hatfield 3. I like Liz
Mm-hmm.
Phair. I like Tori Amos. I like what these women are doing. They're doing this really cool work, and they're actually getting ahead of some of these guys. They're doing stuff that's more innovative than some of the guys. I'm
Mm.
like, so why don't we talk to them?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, it's appreciated to have a diverse, interest like that. It's really great. Yeah.
So going forward for this year, what's your primary focus for as an artist? Is to push the book, or are you guys touring again, or you?
Yeah, we tend to play 2 weekends, 2 3-day weekends a month. So at the end of June, at the beginning of June, we'll be in Nashville and Nashville, Indiana, and Nashville, Tennessee, both of them. And then we have, I've lost track of the calendar, but
Oh,
yeah, we're
that's cool.
doing, Zepparella is always working. And then I have a record that I've been working on that's getting pretty close to done, where I'm working with the guitarist Daniele Guitardo.
Oh, so that's your own independent work?
And that's where I'm singing, and I played the drums on the recording, but live we have a drummer, and so those songs, I really love those songs. I love writing lyrics, and I have to sing, which is a whole thing for me. I'm not a natural at that, but I've been working really hard for my whole life
Well,
on it. So,
open
um,
invitation when that's ready, like, to push that
oh,
project.
thank
That's
you.
what I like to do. I mean, that's kinda what I started doing, is
Oh,
I
thank
love to
you.
break people who are doing that, singer-songwriters, that are working on
Awesome.
their own stuff, so that way, be outside of the pod match thing. You just talk to me through my Calendly, and just when you're
Thank
ready,
you.
you can
Thank
just,
you.
set it up. Well,
Thank
that's
you.
that's
Thank
what I
you.
do. That's what
Yeah, that's your thing. I know you're the big supporter. You're the man, like, lifting everybody up.
that's what I want to. I want to get, I have to get bigger to lift more boats, but we hit like 40,000 listener watchers just last month since we started.
Wonderful.
So we hit
Oh,
40,000.
congratulations.
Our goal is to hit like 100. And so
Yeah.
we want to be able to get to a higher position so we can make people pay attention, not just to me, but the people I talk to. So
Mm,
the whole point is, like, it's not about my ego to get to 100,000. The idea to get to 100,000 is to be able to have a bigger platform for these independent voices. And
that's
so
so kind. Yeah,
that's
that's so
what I
kind.
want to do, because that's the point.
So everybody subscribe.
Thank you. Hard for me to say it.
It's nice to have
But
someone else speak for you every now and then, right? Because I don't know about you, but I'm a
yeah, well,
terrible self-promoter, you know?
I probably could do a lot more, but I'm always like, well, I don't like that. I don't
Yeah.
like to be pushy.
Yeah.
But I just figured, like, just showing up. That's the thing I
Yeah.
would say with podcasting and music. The idea is, like, if you show up, if you
Yeah.
believe in it, people will go. And that's the thing. That's where you guys came up with the idea of Zepparella, and you showed up and you did it, and you're still doing it. And I think
Mhm.
that's what how you get things done is, like, you just don't keep it in your head that you
Well,
have to
yeah.
voice it, like,
And
right?
yeah, and so finding the thing that you really love, because a lot of the times the love is what's gotta carry you through all of the difficulty, right? And the
Yeah,
love of it, the passion for it, that whole thing, follow your bliss. It's like follow your enthusiasm, kind of like I felt with drums when I got home from working. It was like, I really want to sit down and goof around on those. I really want to, and that didn't happen to me with the piano when I was learning when a kid. It was always like, oh, I gotta practice.
yeah.
Um,
If it's a
yeah,
chore, it becomes
yeah,
like if it's like the thing that you love is, like, Hendrix, like, used to have his guitar on his bed,
that's
and
right.
people started worrying about him when he didn't do that, because
Yeah,
that was like the thing about Hendrix is, like, he would, like, walk from club to club with his guitar in London, and just go from one club to the next, just jamming with guys. After he played, he would just
so cool.
keep on just hanging, because he was like, that was the thing. That was
Yeah.
what he was into it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because that's what you're passionate about. You're passionate about art or painting or singing or anything, your sport, whatever you're passionate about. Don't let people tell you, well, you shouldn't do that. Do
Hmm.
something else. You do what you feel is your life's goal. And a lot of people let other people tell them not to do what they really love.
Yeah.
And I think when you find your voice and you find that you actually want to be authentic, and you can't let other people tell you how to be authentic, because that's you.
Yeah. Yeah. And as time goes on, you realize that everybody's just kind of doing their best. Everybody's just kind of trying to follow their own thing. And yeah.
It's
So
cool.
I like the idea of celebrating other people for them putting their hat in the ring.
Yeah, it takes a lot to put yourself on stage. You
It
know,
does.
so anybody that puts themselves on stage, where you're a poet, you get into athletics, you put yourself out there. Anybody chooses to like take it from inside the head and
Mm-hmm.
actually take it out and actually
Mm-hmm.
do it, go
Mm-hmm.
run that marathon because hey, you maybe you don't come in first place, but you did it.
Yeah.
You go and you put yourself into it.
Yeah.
And there's always like this A for effort just because you went and did it, and you're not just one of these naysayers saying, "Oh, why did people do these things?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe you should try something."
That's great.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank-
being a guest on the Fam Electric Ghost podcast. This will be everywhere. Podcast that can be watched or listened to by tomorrow. It is live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube right now, and will be permanent links there after we're done right now. But yeah, thank you for being on the program. And when you do have that record ready, let us know, and we'll talk to you about it.
Thank you, Peg. Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative, and it was a lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.